Good evening, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are all around the world. My name is Dr. Phil Laird, and it's my pleasure to welcome you here to this installment of our innovation series, where we're talking about Trinity Western University's Connected Campus. I'm here with Brian Kerr, Senior Vice President of Enrollment, Personal and Career Development here at Trinity Western University, and I'm excited to have you all here with us. Now, we're asking you to put questions in the question and answer space so we can ask the questions during this interview. I want to make sure we're paying attention to your questions and asking them. And I'm going to ask a question that I've got written down here first to get things going in the interview session. And it's a real privilege to have you here with us today, Brian. Thanks for joining us.
Great. Thanks so much, Phil.
The concept of the question, or the connected campus, sounds simple. Let's get everyone connected and get all the technology working together. I know it has been much more difficult to implement than it sounded in your talk, in a 15-minute talk. What have been the biggest challenges you've faced in moving forward with this innovation for the Trinity Western University campus?
Yeah, so I think as we've been moving this initiative from what started out of a real sense of urgency this past summer, where our students were suddenly scattered all over the world and the semester didn't end the way that they thought it would, we had a built-in sense of urgency and something to rally around. That sense of urgency created a culture that reacted to it and perhaps didn't behave the way it normally would. There was something to work towards collectively, and the sense of cooperation was accelerated. And it's not to say that people aren't uncooperative in their everyday work, but in the context of COVID, it was definitely accelerated. And then out of that sense of shared purpose and that new culture, then we brought technology solutions to help that culture to then enact change. And so as we've been now taking this from what was born out of a true sense of urgency into a sustained and ongoing program and way of doing things at the university, the ongoing challenge is to make sure that we continually recognize and have that sense of urgency about it. And then to work on building the right culture in order to satisfy that collective vision, and then finding the right technology solutions in order to enable that culture to thrive. So it's the ongoing challenge and the difficulty is to make sure that you're ordering those things properly and not just jumping right to technology solutions or platforms, but paying attention to the much broader context that you're working in.
Good. And of course, today, you can't implement change in very many things around the world unless you're thinking about technology too. So there's an integration between those two things in thinking about how we would change. I'm going to ask a question from one of our guests, and there's nothing like a softball question to start off your talk. Jacqueline Bay has a question, and here it is. I'm just going to read it from the screen. In the pursuit of a connected campus experience, do you feel you walked through Kotter's 8-step process for leading change, or have you had to shortlist the process or tighten up the process for expediency? Where do you feel are the gaps in this change process in shifting the culture of TWU, and what is being done to narrow those gaps?
Yeah. That's a really good question, and I'll make the distinction between the initial project that we worked on this past summer, and I think we went through a very accelerated, rapid cycling through of Kotter's eight steps, and so where he talks about having that sense of urgency, creating that vision, getting a guiding coalition, and enlisting a volunteer army. We had all those steps really in play in the summer, though we might not have been able to articulate them to a great degree, turning the whole project around within the course of just a week or so. And as we're now rolling it out into a more permanent way of doing things, we're definitely working through each of those steps that Kotter talks about. As a university, we have recognized the ongoing urgency that COVID-19 is presenting with us, and that we cannot go back to business as usual. We have a very different journey for our students, and a journey that can be greatly enhanced as we work together. we have a new vision statement that was just rolled out officially yesterday at the university. And so we have this vision. We have formed a steering committee to be a part of this, to have as that guiding coalition. And we've been working our way across campus and getting buy-in from all across the institution. And so systematically working through Cotter's framework has been very helpful for us as we're driving this change. But in times of urgency, you sometimes have to perhaps shortcut some of those things, but I don't think you should ever skip any of them. You might just have to do some of them at the same time or in a more accelerated fashion than you typically would otherwise.
Okay. Now, I'm going to ask you a question that I haven't listed here and I don't have up there, but it's a question about innovation. And there's innovation that is strategic. You think, we have to design a new iPhone. And it's strategic, and you design it and you go through a process. And there's innovation that is emergent. You just have to do it, because if you don't survive. Trinity Western University this year faced COVID-19, and we came out of COVID-19 with a 6% enrollment increase, which is unusual. There's not a lot of universities around that can say that we grew during this year of COVID-19. And I know the Connected Campus now is emerging, but sort of maybe Connected Campus 1.0 took place last summer, right? Can you talk about that innovation that is emergent? It just has to happen or you don't make it. And the experience of going through that last summer and how that's helped you to think through this concept of Connected Campus today.
Yeah, the urgency of the situation, it was, if we looked at where our students had gone to and the risk to enrollment, the potential drop in enrollment was upwards of 30% to our overall student body, which is significant. And that's something that would be very difficult to come out of in a very strong position. So the importance was definitely there. Yeah, so it really opened our eyes to what was possible. And the beauty of what happened in that moment is that everybody collectively realized it at the same time. And so we had a very willing community that was willing to do whatever it took. People's jobs had rapidly changed. And it really gave us a sense of what's possible. If we think about things differently, if we think about what is the need of the student that we need to serve, not what do we need to do within our own individual departments or roles, because those were all up in the air now. When all of our students moved out of the residence halls, the residence directors didn't have a regular normal job anymore. The residence halls were empty, but those students still existed. They were just living all over the world. Our athletic coaches, our writing coaches, so it wasn't business as usual for anybody, but there was still a very specific job that needed to be done for our students. And so how could we approach the time that we had and the needs that our students had from the perspective of the progress a student had to make during that time to finish their semester well, to feel supported, to know that there were solutions, to know that there was a campus that cared about them, and to orient everything we did around those needs, not our typical day-to-day measurements of success in our own individual roles.
Great, thank you. I'm going to go to one of the questions that we've had asked. This is from Mbenzi George. This TWU approach sounds easy. I know it wasn't easy, and we always try to make things sound easy, but what advice do you have for countries around the world, especially those in the South, who are struggling to re-engage their students using technology and may not have the same infrastructure that we have in order to make that adjustment to COVID-19?
Yeah, I think remembering that there's at least 3 layers to this connected campus concept, and the technology is one of the layers, and the technology is how you actually go about doing what you're doing. But the first 2 layers are absolutely critical. So regardless of what technology or platforms you have access to, it really starts with that sense of urgency or that vision that you have. And so you don't need any technology or any platforms to have that sense of urgency. The second layer is that culture, that culture of collaboration, being willing to do what it takes to get the job done, willing to go beyond the bounds of what your written job description is, to work with people that you may not have worked with before. And that's all possible without technology. So the underlying pieces can be there, and then you use whatever tools that you have. If that's phones, if that's writing letters manually, if that's email, you use the technology and the tools that you do have access to in order to help the culture to thrive. You don't start with the technology and then decide what you can do with it.
Right, that's a great answer. Now, last summer, we started to go with a phrase that we used, and this relates to the Connected Campus. It relates to your new role at Trinity Western University, and we started to use a phrase that said, "The world has changed, your future hasn't." And this is really important. The world has changed, your future hasn't. How does the Connected Campus connect to the journey that our students have to go through? And it's not a journey that we've created. It's a journey that exists in sort of the existential experience of our students. They're going through, they're trying to find their way. How does the Connected Campus connect to that and resonate with our students?
Well, the journey that a student is going through is a highly complex journey, and we can't prescribe that. We can't predict what that is. A student is going to go through a journey. One student may work exclusively within their school or a faculty. Another student may have a lot of interaction with the student life area or with an alumni community. And so a student's going to have a very, very diverse journey through their time with us. And so the Connected Campus initiative is really about building an infrastructure and the type of campus that is resilient and adaptive to whatever journey that student happens to take through, and making sure that we're connected as a university, as staff and faculty, to respond to the journey that the student is on, and also to be able to serve the student to the best ability possible. So it's making sure that we have line of sight to what's happening on the other side of the institution, what realities a student is going to face before and after they might come across our particular area, and making sure that we are nurturing and stewarding that relationship well, as an entire university, not just a collection of individuals having isolated and individual conversations or interactions with a student, but what's the collective journey that the student is on, and what's the system we need in order to make that happen.
Great, thank you. I'm going to ask a student from Sophia Oliver, and a question from Sophia Oliver, and I might rephrase a little bit of the question. I'm proud to say that we work from our hearts when I see what I have learned. However, in order to represent this type of working from our hearts, how can I come forth firsthand and face a corporate and multi-performance world out there? How do I deal with the fact that it's not just about heart, it's also about numbers and performance? And that's, I think, an experience of what the work world is like. And we live in that world too. For you and I, we talk about 6% enrollment growth. Well, that's numbers. That's enrollment, revenue. There's lots of parts to that. So how does someone think about working from their hearts, but also paying attention to numbers and performance and balancing those things?
Yep, absolutely. That's a great question, Sophia, and that's a tension sometimes that we have to live in. But I don't know that it necessarily needs to be a tension. We're called to do things with excellence. We're called to serve as many students as we possibly can, and to perform at the highest level that we possibly can perform. And so it's that performance needs to, though, come out of the heart to serve well, and to serve each and every student, and to ensure that every graduate is equipped. And so there are metrics, there are numbers, there are results that are very important in that. But the reason that we're driving for those results is to have that transformative impact in the lives of students. If you come at it purely from the performance metrics perspective, to want to get recognition or want to get get fame or accolades because you're performing well, that's perhaps not coming at it from the right perspective. But to truly view what you're doing as making a profound difference in the lives of others, to do that to the maximum effectiveness and for and with the most amount of people, you need some measurements and some performance metrics in that to make sure you're doing it well.
Right. Now we're coming close to the end here, so I'm going to ask one more question, and I'm going to mix two questions. This is a mixture of a question from Derek Mohammed and Scott Macklin, so I'm going to put them together. So Derek's question is: the Connected Campus strategy is a truly innovative idea. What are the greatest restraining forces you face, or the greatest challenges? And then there's also the issue of the experiential record. So how does the Center for Student Work, Emergent Hopes, how do we build these things together to find how we would kind of connect it all together in the life of the learner as well?
Sure. Well, those are good questions. Thanks, Derek and Scott. I'll talk to Derek's question first. I think the greatest restraining force that we face, or the greatest challenge that we faced as we're now mainstreaming this and making it more of embedding it into the DNA of what we do, is to continually remember that this is not just about technology and platforms and data. This is about starting with that vision, starting with that common point on the horizon, making sure that from that we're establishing the right culture in order to accomplish the vision, and then creating the technology and the platforms in order to allow that culture to thrive. And so that challenge is to be so disciplined in remembering that it starts with vision, then goes to culture, and then goes to systems and platforms, and not be tempted by the next shiny new platform or the next cool technology innovation that you could have. Not that those things are bad or wrong, but if you don't start with vision and work your way backwards, you're not going to be able to change culture by starting with technology.
Great.
And so that's an important piece. And Scott's referencing the experiential record, which is a new thing that we are launching at Trinity Western, which is giving a student an opportunity to collect and curate all of the, and reflect upon all of the experiences that they're having across and through their time at the university, and helping a student to make meaning of those and map those to the skills and competencies that they're going to need in order to thrive in their careers and into life after graduation. So it's helping a student to say, what is the connection between my job in the cafeteria making sandwiches in my student job, and the student leadership position I have in a residence hall, and the experience I had in an internship in my classroom? How do I make meaning and sense of all of that? And what was I actually learning, and what competencies was I building? Was I learning data analysis? Was I learning about teamwork or project management or problem solving or effective communication? But in order for us to be able to give the student the opportunity to reflect on those experiences, we need to be able to know what those experiences were. And that's where the Connected Campus comes in. So when a student logs into their experiential record, they'll be able to see all of the experiences that we know that they've had, because we've stored those in a consistent way, we've tracked those in a consistent way, and then a student can choose which ones they want to reflect on, map them to the right competencies and skills, have them reflected on their resume, mapping them to their LinkedIn profile. And so we're connecting what are seemingly disconnected experiences, but keeping in mind the overall journey a student is on, why they came in the first place, to be equipped and to make progress in their career, and bringing that to a very tangible point. So that's the intersection of something very practical in the life of a student, and why our Connected Campus has to be so well connected on the back end to be able to support that journey to the fullest extent possible.
That's great. Thank you, Brian. Now, the sign of a good interview is that the questions are flowing in and we can't answer them all. So that's good. All that means is we're going to have Brian back again. There is a question from Dr. William Ademwingi from Nigeria, and I'm sorry, I may not have pronounced your name properly. And the question is, what faculties are covered by Trinity Western University? And I can answer that question really quickly. Trinity Western University has a faculty of natural and applied science. We have a faculty of humanities and social sciences as the two main faculties. And then we have a number of professional schools. We have a school of business. We have a school of arts, media, and culture. We have a school of education, a school of nursing, a school of human kinetics. And we also have TW Global, which is an area that manages international and global programs for students all around the world, and a number of international and global connections. Those are our key faculties in schools. And Dr. William, if you'd like to connect with me personally, you can get my email after the innovation series, and we can connect live and talk further if you'd like to. I want to thank all of you for joining us for this installment of our innovation series. It has been great to have you here. We've got a great team behind the cameras, and you're going to see their names soon. So if you are from Trinity Western University and you see them on campus, you need to give them a shout out and thank them for all the work they've done in making sure this is a great episode. And we want to thank Brian Kerr, Senior Vice President of Enrollment for Personal and Career Development, who is here, or Personal and Professional Development, who is here to support us in this innovation series installment. And thank you so much. And we'll see you all again in a few weeks, where we have Scott Macklin coming to talk about online and multi-access learning. Thank you so much. God bless.